Hello and welcome back to Deck Doctor. This week I'm bringing you a spicy list. This is Modgnik's Yellow Gnats. I couldn't think of another name for it. I was going to call it Modgnat, but I didn't want to confuse anyone. But that is a nickname for this deck because Modgnik did very well with the Gnats before they got changed in early access. But he's a big fan of the card and he's brought it back. And he actually held rank 1 this season in God rank with a list like this. Now this isn't Modgnik's exact list, this is my own variation of it, and I've added some extra power to the deck using popular legendaries like Kaleem, but also a bit of healing and a flying creature in Radiance. Now like every Modgnik deck, the game plan isn't so straightforward. You have to kind of adapt to your opponent and be able to identify when you need to play aggressive, when you need to play defensive. Much like his blue-yellow Pew-Pew, if you remember that episode of Deck Doctor, that's another deck that takes a lot of on-the-fly thinking and adaptation and really doesn't have an archetype. And I kind of feel the same way about this list as well, just because it can do pretty much everything. It can play aggressive, it can play control, but one of the main synergies, as you can probably expect, is using the Annoying Gnats to gain board control with those Golden Aviaries and just apply a lot of pressure and then eventually win the match. So let's talk about the deck and see what each card does individually for the list. Let's start things off with the Annoying Gnat itself. Now, the title says it all. He is called an Annoying Gnat, so he is going to frustrate your opponent because every time he is destroyed, he is going to appear randomly on board. Now, straight up, Annoying Gnat isn't very powerful on its own, but when you combine it with the Golden Aviary structure, a 3-1 is pretty good, especially against popular decks like Blue Jump, who use smaller creatures, and you'll be able to recycle these Gnats as they respawn and become additional 3-1s. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when a Gnat is destroyed, it will spawn in a random location, so if you were trying to set up some very specific clears on your opponent's board, or maybe specific damage, you might want to take into consideration that a Gnat might spawn in the way of your creature you're trying to attack with. Especially in this deck where you have a lot of flying creatures, but you also utilize cards like Flash Wind and Celestial Tower to allow you to move around the board very quickly. So take those things into consideration. Gnats also deal damage to you, so you have to be very careful. This card is very bad against red decks, especially burn decks. They just get to kill you faster. So there's a lot to consider when playing this card and the deck. Demon Wrangler is an excellent card in this list, specifically because you can destroy an Annoying Gnat to use its gift ability, and you're going to get the Gnat back. And a 5-2 Demon Wing is excellent, especially in the early game, because you can fly it off to a well and double collect, or you can use its incredible attack stat to help clear creatures. Once you combine that with a Golden Aviary, it becomes a 7-2, so it's a very powerful creature for very cheap. And the 2-1's also pretty good as well. It's going to harvest Faeria for you, but also help you with clears. Sunsilk Faeria is one of the most interesting cards in this list because I hadn't seen much of it until Modgnik started playing it. And I can see the synergies. This deck uses a lot of events. It also has Iona's Smile, one of the new cards that lets you search for flying creatures, and there are a lot of flying creatures in this list, which makes Sunsilk Faeria's ability much more consistent once you start thinning your deck of those flyers. As a 4-2, it's very powerful. It's going to be able to clear a lot of creatures, and you'll usually get a Faeria advantage in a trade-off, but also it has charge free as well, so it's going to be able to zip around the board, collect Faeria for you, but if you combine that with a Flash Wind, you can apply a lot of pressure very quickly. Kaleem is one of the best legendaries in the game. I included this card because not only is it a flyer and you can search it with Iona's Smile, but a turn 2 Kaleem is a very powerful opener, and it's a card your opponent generally has to respect and try and answer at some point because it can cause a lot of problems. It can be a very good harvester, it can challenge other creatures on board, especially with that Aviary giving it a power up, but also the followers can apply a lot of damage, so this card is incredibly flexible and I feel it fits very well in this list. However, Modgnik didn't use it, so Modgnik is the creator of this deck. He may have seen other options. However, I'm a big fan of Kaleem, so I have left him in. Mobility plays a key role in the win condition for this list. Flash Wind is a zero cost event which will allow your creatures to move into advantageous positions defensively or aggressively, and combined with the Celestial Tower you can really get around the board, giving a creature charge free first and then moving it, then using a Flash Wind allows you to cover a lot of ground, so it can put you into more aggressive positions and defensive positions, and this mobility will always play a key role in how you win your matches. Most of the time you're going to want to set up a tower and push a lot of aggression out of the blue, like your opponent might not expect it. A good example is if you have a Demon Wing on the collection spot, you can give him charge free, zip him across to your opponent's orb, drop that Flash Wind to give him that extra little push and start dealing damage. And you know, these Demon Wings, Gnats, especially combined with the Aviary, this damage starts to add up, so this can play a big role in your win condition. For removal, you have pretty standard yellow cards. You have Soul Drain, which is going to deal 2 damage to an enemy, but also heal you as well, which is pretty important considering you're going to be taking damage from your Annoying Gnats. You have Last Nightmare as well. Premium hard removal, can remove any threat you want, and this is a great way of dealing with big creatures that your Gnats can't handle, or just giving you some breathing room to set up either defenses or offensive play. Last but not least, we have Emperor's Command. This is an amazing card for this list because not only does it deal damage technically with a -1, -2, allow your Gnats to maybe clear a creature, but it also gives you healing, and like I said, healing being so important because of how much damage you'll take from your Gnats. So the combination of Soul Drain and the Emperor's Command and Radiance gives you a lot of healing and a lot of sustain to allow you to stay in the match. Iona's Smile has fantastic synergies with this list, specifically because it searches a lot of cards in your deck. The flyers, Annoying Gnat, for example, Radiance, Kaleem, the Sunsilk Faeria. So it lets you thin your deck of those flyers and get them onto the board quicker. Lots of cards in this list are very cheap, so you want to be able to find them quickly and just overwhelm your opponent. It also thins your deck as well, making Sunsilk Faeria procs much more frequent. Golden Aviary is the MVP. This is going to power up all your flyers. It's going to make your Annoying Gnats more than just annoying. They're going to become real threats, and your opponent is not going to be able to answer them efficiently because they do respawn. It just extends the power of all your flyers. It allows you to push more damage, and it allows you to take more favorable trades on your opponent's creatures. Last but not least, there's another addition I've made is Radiance. This is again a flyer which can be searched with Iona's Smile, but it also gives you extra sustain once you've taken a lot of damage because of the Annoying Gnats. And as a 10/10, it's pretty powerful. It has a lot of mobility built into the card anyway with that dash free, so you can play it as an offensive or defensive card, and your opponent's going to have to answer it. And it is a very bulky creature, so it's going to be very difficult without transform effects or removal effects. For the mulligan, you are going to want to find a Demon Wrangler and an Annoying Gnat. That is the perfect opening combo for you. On turn 2, you can play the Annoying Gnat, sacrifice it, and get a Demon Wing that can go and fly off and collect from 2 wells. Your Annoying Gnat can then start applying pressure depending on where it spawns, and you can send your Demon Wrangler off to collect off the other well. Annoying Gnat on its own is not very good. It doesn't harvest Faeria for you, so you want to be able to pick up Demon Wrangler. This is kind of a priority creature unless you find Kaleem, which is also very good because Kaleem on turn 2 is a very powerful opener, and again will allow you to collect Faeria very easily thanks to his flying and charge too. Alternatively, I think Iona's Smile's not bad. It allows you to search for maybe Kaleem. But really, you want to find that Demon Wrangler. It's key to setting up your opener, and alternatively, Kaleem as well is also very powerful. The deck does come out on the expensive side when it comes to crafting cost. Has 6 commons, 8 rares, 14 epics, and 2 legendaries. And those epics do really add up, taking the total cost up to 1,950. Now this is by no means a top tier deck. It's a lot of fun, but you'll have to take into consideration how expensive it is, because a lot of the cards do synergize together, and it's very hard to replace them because, like I said, the synergies are there, and it's what brings this list together. However, if you don't have one of the legendaries Radiance, you can switch that out for a Healing Song. That's not a very bad replacement there. And you could also do the same for Kaleem as well, so that reduces the cost of the deck quite a lot. You can take those two legendaries out, and then you can just add those Healing Songs, which give you additional events to power up your Sunsilk Fairies, but also additional healing and card draw to help you sustain after taking a lot of Gnat damage. The strengths and weaknesses are pretty straightforward. Gnats stick to the board, so these guys don't die. They will always come back and cause problems, and especially with that Aviary as well, they turn into real threats, and they can definitely have a tremendous influence on board control, being able to clear your enemy's creatures and then respawn for another round of trading or clearing on the following turn. This deck does have great mobility, combined with the Celestial Tower and Flashwind and a Sunsilk Fairy. You have a lot of charge, and you also have mobility tricks in Flashwind to get you into advantageous positions. And as I said, Golden Aviary is kind of the MVP. It really empowers this deck, allowing your Gnats to challenge the board, but also be able to push a lot of damage as well. You know, coming from a 1/1 to a 3/1 is quite a big power creep for a small creature, and once you swarm your opponent, they're going to be very annoying to deal with, because once you destroy them, they're just going to come back. As for weaknesses, very weak to removal. These creatures have a low health. Kaleem has the highest health at 6. Most of the other creatures are between 1 and 2. So Ground Shaker, Cypher's Rafts are going to be very efficient in clearing these creatures, and that applies to Burn as well. Being able to destroy an annoying Gnat with something like a Cypher's Raft deals 2 damage, and then you take an additional 2 damage from the Gnat's ability. So Burn has even a more extended reach against this list because of the annoying Gnat. You're going to have to be very cautious when going against Burn decks. Last but not least, Gnats can kill you, and this kind of goes back to, you know, them being removed and you being burned. If Gnats are destroyed often enough, sometimes it can put you in a life-threatening situation where you can be burst down on that turn or the following. I had a game against Modgnik when I first experienced this list, and I ping-ponged his Gnats around the board by clearing them, and I managed to deal like 8 damage in one turn by just killing the same Gnat that spawned next to my other creatures. So that could be a major weakness with this deck, especially if you get bad Gnat placements, which allows your opponent to clear them off. As for matchups, it's quite hard to say really. I think the obvious ones are this deck beats Blue Jump very easily because the Gnats are so efficient in clearing the smaller creatures, but does suffer greatly at the hands of red and burn decks thanks to Gnats dealing damage to yourself. With your land placement, you're going to want to start off by building deserts to the side of your orb, which allows you to set up flyers and a Demon Wrangler to start harvesting off your own well. Then you want to send your Demon Wing from the Demon Wrangler off to the side, move it into a double collection spot, or use it as a tool to gain board control. You can build additional lands as well to allow your Demon Wrangler to move and collect. You're going to need a third desert, so that can usually do the job. And these lands are going to be taking up structure spots, so you need to be aware of that. You might have to build some neutrals to place your structures like the Golden Aviary and the Celestial Tower. But lands are not that important really until you get to the late game, where you want to finish off your opponent. Once you push into an aggressive position, when you're sitting on your opponent's land, you can develop, say, an aggressive desert to make sure you can continue applying pressure with other creatures in your hand until you finish off the game. But in most cases, most of your land is going to be built around your orb, because you're going to be able to push your creatures up the board with flying, and it makes it much more harder for your opponent to challenge you, because they have to build lands towards you and spend additional resources, while you're just sitting on your lands at the back until you build that aggressive land at the end of the game. That wraps up this episode of Deck Doctor. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up or give it a subscribe if you'd like to see more video content from this channel. We have the Card Spotlight series, Deck Doctor and Deck Top Pilot, along with monthly cup VODs. If you'd like to find out more information about Faeria or just find some decks, be sure to head over to faeria.com/the-hub for community articles, guides, and deck lists. So until next time guys, take care and have a great day.